At 9:17 on the morning of January 22, 1943, Second Lieutenant John George crouched in the ruins of a Japanese bunker west of Point Cruz, watching a banyan tree 240 yards away through a scope his fellow officers had laughed at for 6 weeks. 27 years old, Illinois state champion, 0 confirmed kills. The Japanese had 11 snipers operating in the Point Cruz groves, and in the past 72 hours, they had killed 14 men from the 132nd Infantry Regiment. George's commanding officer had called his rifle a toy. The other platoon leaders called it his mail-order sweetheart. When he had unpacked the Winchester Model 70 with its Lyman Alaskan scope and Griffin and Howe mount at Camp Forest in Tennessee, the armorer wanted to know if this was meant for deer or German. George explained it was for the Japanese. They shipped out before the rifle arrived. George spent the voyage to Guadalcanal watching other men clean their Garands, while his own weapon sat in a warehouse in Illinois. He requested it be forwarded through military mail. 6 weeks later, in late December of 1942, a supply sergeant handed him a wooden crate marked "Fragile." Inside was the rifle he had saved 2 years of National Guard pay to buy. The rifle weighed 9 pounds. The scope added another 12 ounces. The Garand issued to every other man in his battalion weighed 9.5 pounds with no magnification. George's rifle was bolt action, 5 rounds. The Garand was semi-automatic, 8 rounds. Captain Morris ordered him to leave the sporting rifle in his tent and carry a real weapon. George carried it anyway. The 132nd Infantry had relieved the Marines on Guadalcanal in late December of 1942. The Marines had been fighting since August. They had taken Henderson Field. They had held it. But they had not taken Mount Austin, and they had not cleared the Japanese from the coastal groves west of the Matanakaw River. Mount Austin stood 1,514 feet tall. The Japanese called it the Gifu. 500 men, 47 bunkers. George's battalion attacked on December 17th. They fought for 16 days. They lost 34 men killed and 279 wounded before they finally took the western slope on January 2nd. By then, George had fired his Winchester exactly 0 times in combat. The jungle around Point Cruz was different. No bunkers, no fixed positions, just Japanese soldiers who had retreated west from Henderson Field and dug into the massive trees. Some of those soldiers were snipers. They had scoped Arisaka Type 98s. They knew the jungle. They knew how to wait. On January 19th, a sniper killed Corporal Davis while he was filling canteens at a creek. On January 20th, another sniper killed 2 men from L Company during a patrol. On January 21st, 3 more men died. One of them was shot through the neck from a tree the patrol had walked past twice. The battalion commander summoned George that night. The Japanese snipers were killing his men faster than malaria. He needed someone who could shoot. He wanted to know if that mail-order rifle could actually hit anything. George explained his credentials. Illinois state championship at 1,000 yards in 1939. 23 years old at the time. Youngest winner in the state's history. 6-inch groups at 600 yards with iron sights. With the Lyman Alaskan, 5 rounds inside 4 inches at 300 yards. The commander gave him until morning to prove it. If you want to see how George's civilian rifle performed against Japanese snipers trained for jungle warfare, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to George. George spent the night checking his rifle. The Winchester had been packed in cosmoline for the ocean voyage. He cleaned it again. He checked the scope mounts. He loaded 5 rounds of .30-06 hunting ammunition he had packed in Tennessee. Military ball ammo. The same cartridge the Garand fired. At dawn on January 22nd, George moved into position in the ruins of a Japanese bunker his battalion had captured 3 days earlier. The bunker overlooked the coconut groves west of Point Cruz. Intelligence said the Japanese snipers operated from the large trees in that area. Banyan trees. Some of them reached 90 feet tall, with trunks 8 feet thick. A sniper could climb one of those trees before dawn and sit there all day without being seen. George had brought no spotter, no radio man, just his rifle and a canteen and 60 rounds of ammunition in stripper clips. He settled into the bunker and began to watch the trees through his scope. The Lyman Alaskan had 2.5 power magnification. Not much, but enough to see movement in the branches that the naked eye would miss. The jungle was never silent. Birds, insects, the distant sound of artillery. George had learned to filter out the noise and focus on movement. He glassed the trees slowly, left to right, top to bottom. At 9:17 he saw it. A branch moved. No wind, just a small shift. 87 feet up in a banyan tree, 240 yards away. George watched. The branch moved again. Then he saw the shape. A man. Dark clothing, positioned in a fork where 3 branches met. The Japanese sniper was facing east.